What's up guys? I'm Evan from Reddit Stories. And today we are reading Therapists of Reddit. Have you ever been genuinely scared of a patient and why? Please consider subscribing if you like the video. Person on the other side. Went to my university's psych hospital due to suicidal ideation. Was 18 at the time. I was lobbed in with the under 22 group and there's this fireman in his 20s who I'd learned through the grapevine, other nosy ass patients, was bipolar. No biggie, we all got something wrong in there, right? He was very quiet, decently attractive and kept to himself even in group sessions. He would always give me this penetrative, unblinking stare all day long. I'm very shy and hadn't spoken 2 words to the guy. Maybe smiled in passing if I made eye contact, which I avoided due to the staring. In the main room, like a living room I guess for a psych ward, we'd all be hanging out and he'd sit across from me with a sketchbook. Honestly just thought he was passing time. Once you're committed you can't leave unless the doctor says so. Anyways, my mum comes to the hospital to visit me and she noticed the guy staring at me. She walks behind him while he's with his sketchbook and her entire body froze. Like completely locked up, as if you're watching a video and press pause. He had drawn a very detailed picture of me, hanging from the ceiling in the psych ward. She calmly tells the nurse and the guy is removed from the room. Never saw him again. A couple of days later I overheard some nurses saying that the guy had filled the entire sketchbook with different drawings of me, dead, in different scenarios. Honestly, it was scariest thing I've ever been through. Holy that's terrifying. I'm 27 now and it still freaks me up. Like you really never know what a person is thinking. This was early on in training, but a mandated client had dropped acid before the session and it started coming on while we were talking. He didn't want to be there, as it was much larger than me, 5 feet 0 inches. Once he got to threatening me for being the reason everything was wrong with the world, I ended up needing to get up and leave my own office to get a supervisor. I definitely thought he would hit or strangle me if I stayed. Why on earth would you drop acid before going in public, let alone therapy? The only one I have felt a little scared of was one who threatened to kill me. I knew she meant it. She had already assaulted a number of other staff. She got sent to a higher security ward and I heard she had broke staff's fingers first day she was there. She held staff and other patients hostage in one of our rooms, threatening them, but circling the table, as if playing with them first. I see violence and aggression regularly and it doesn't faze me, but she did. I would purposely avoid eye contact and look straight ahead, avoiding her and pretend I wasn't intimidated, as that's what she wanted. So do these people catch charges for assaulting hospital staff? How does it all work? Some can. Depends how unwell they are. Do they have capacity? Is it just bad behavior or mental illness? Are they detained, etc.? Lots of factors to be considered. When I was in med school, our psychiatry attending told that years ago she dyed her hair red. Few weeks later she had a patient who obsessed with redhead women. Patient was thinking about killing redhead women and then putting their plucked head into boxes. So, she had 2 weeks off and patient was carried by another doc. Not a therapist, but a school counselor, small young female. I have a student who is 6 feet 4 inches with emotional behavioral issues. Reading his social history made me cry because of all the he's been through. So, of course, I have a soft spot for him. But his anger gets out of control and it can be very scary. He punched a pole right in front of me once and narrowly missed my face. I looked at him in the eyes and sternly said, "Do you realize you almost just punched me in the face?" He snapped out of his rage and apologized profusely. I wanted to hug him and tell him everything was going to be all right. I was pretty nervous when the drunk partner of a client backed me into a corner, and pretty goddamn sweaty when a violent ex-offender with a good 80 pounds on me blocked my exit and told me he was going to kill me and my family. The one that really got me long-term was a 15-year-old girl in a residential program I worked at. She had substance use issues, which is why she was there, but it was clear from the jump that she had deep mental health stuff stemming from her child. She had been adopted out of a Russian orphanage where she and a younger sibling has been left in a crib alone for God knows how long, covered in lice and shaved bald. She had a lot of expected attachment issues, but talking to her was like talking to a black pit full of hatred. She hated everyone and everything and had no conception of consequences or what self-preservation was. She'd do stuff that would spin your head around in terms of how unsafe it was, and she just had no reaction. There was no getting through to her, as she needed the interventions when she was a very small child to be able to move forward successfully. She was discharged when it was found out that she was hiding knives under her mattress. I would not be surprised if she was in jail at this point. My parents foster children and had one girl like this, though could hide it. She acted sweet as molasses, but turned into Satan. pulled a plastic bag over my head while I was driving on an interstate, told my dad she would dance on his grave one day. Dad caught her one night with a steak knife in her bed. The disturbing part was that she was inching the point closer and closer to her own eyeball. When asked what the hell she was doing, she replied she was curious what stabbing her eyeball would feel like. Kid creeped me the hell out. She was in therapy, of course, but I really doubt she is normal now. Just hope she hasn't hurt herself or someone else. I am a woman and a therapist working with people with severe issues. I had a client come in for an initial visit whose file read like that of a serial killer. Animal abuse, torture of other children when he was a child, homicidal attempts. I had an initial moment of intense feelings of, and then shifted to what happened to this guy. Turns out what he went through as a child was more horrible than I could have imagined. We did a lot of great therapy work together, and last I heard he was doing really well in his life. As a therapist, I don't give up on people just because they have done and are capable of some pretty horrible stuff. The world needs more people like you, and fewer people like whoever raised that guy. In case you were wondering, it would be fewer here. You use less for uncountable things, and fewer for countable things. I usually remember it by thinking less butter, fewer calories. That doesn't really work, because less butter is not a concept I'm familiar with. More butter at all times always. Yes, enough to quit my job. Had high caseload of suicidal teens. Most were medicated and low risk, but had 2 kiddos who had several suicide attempts prior to me, and while under my watch. I was getting physically ill, not sleeping well, constantly worried. I tried to transfer them to a higher level of care, but our company was greedy and didn't want to transfer them and lose those funds. I ended up quitting on the spot for these kids to be given a trauma-focused therapist and get the help they needed. Best decision for both myself and those kids. Worked with a patient that complained of reoccurring night terrors about lobsters being boiled alive. He couldn't figure out what was causing them. The fact he killed his girlfriend, chopped her up and boiled her head didn't seem come to him as a reason he might be having these dreams. My only fear is the system will have to release him one day, as they could never get him sane enough to stand trial. At what point do you stop waiting for the client to connect the dots and just say something like that? Obligatory, not a therapist, but an EMT. Have one PT that calls us saying he overdosed on meds probably once every 1-2 months, wears stuff with our logo and pretends to be on our ambulance service. This person used to show up to actual scenes and pretend to be one of our first responders. It took a deputy putting him in cuffs before he stopped. He also has a radio and a pager. Radio only receives, and will record out conversations and send them to me. Strangely enough, he is actually a very, very nice person, and if you talk to him without mentioning the ambulance, you would never know he has issues. Doesn't scare me, but scares some of our more experienced crew members, so I'm guessing they know something I don't. I'm an actual therapist, the first in the thread. The only time I've ever been scared is when my physical safety is threatened, such as a patient blocking the door, hinting they know where I live, or implying they'd like to hurt or rape me. I have a stellar poker face, and once these really tough patients realize that I'm unfazed, they usually drop it. My strength in therapy is mostly just broad acceptance and tolerance of whatever they bring to the table. I let them know when I have to break confidentiality from the get-go, and that's that. I am a new therapist, and like you, have already experienced the threat of physical safety by hinting they know where I live, my personal number, social media, or commenting on my body. How the hell do you even respond? Silence? Or do you talk about it? Because I have struggled with this and no one really tells you how to deal with it. Honestly, I ask them if they feel they want to hurt me point blank. I let them know that I'm human, and what they just said set off my alarm bells, and explore it with them. It's self-disclosure for sure, but being real with people is the best way always. If they push back, always pay attention to your instincts and end the session. Call your supervisor. That is, hey, you live in suburb, right? I'm not comfortable letting patients know my whereabouts. I work in this city and enjoy it though. You're really freaking pretty. I bet you're freaking dirty in bed. I think you know that's not an appropriate way to talk to me. We can explore what you might be feeling and why you felt you needed to say that. But if it continues, I'm afraid we'll end this session and I'll refer you to another therapist. Understand? Thanks for the response. This helps a lot for me, especially now that everything is teletherapy and video therapy. Reading clients has become a tad more challenging, as well as drawing boundaries. I also have experienced clients who, when I address the comments, they say things like, "Oh, lighten up, I'm just joking, don't take everything so seriously," which is also frustrating as heckers. I like how your responses are right to the point and drawing those boundaries right away. My uncle is one, and the answer is yes. therapists aren't like they show in movies where they only deal with insanely complex and tough issues. Most of the people that come see him just have normal problems that most people can relate to. People seek therapy for a whole assortment of issues. So if someone goes to him with violent thoughts, or deeply disturbing issues and ideologies, it shocks him like it would shock the rest of us. They are just trained to handle it better than the rest of us, but deep down their reaction to it is the same. Don't forget to subscribe, or I'll come and steal your pet. Bye.